Welcome to our Sage orientation, the first one since our Kickstarter launch. And welcome everybody here who's been part of this journey of Sage, helping us feed the data to Sage, helping us debug Sage and test Sage and all sorts of things, and just encourage us and support us along the way. Here we are finally. So for those of you who are watching this and do not have Sage, don't know what Sage about, Sage aims to be an all-in-one garden designer app, meaning we want to holistically bring together several disparate aspects of growing food in a permaculture way into one platform that you can easily use, go out in the garden and record things where it's stored centrally. And this is how we do this. Well, we do it through the Sage app. Our primary focus is serving families who value organic and local food and see the importance of providing their families the most nutrient-dense food that money can't buy. But what makes us unique is that we use technology and permaculture accessible and make permaculture accessible by simplifying and strategizing our garden work. So the things that are the same between permaculture and the tech that we're trying to employ here with the Sage app is both of them are holistic. So in permaculture, we don't just look at plants and this one area of your garden. We are looking at how are you eating? Are you going out every day to get sunshine and vitamin D? How are the plants in your area? You work with nature, respecting the different rhythms of and cycles of the seasons, the native soil, working with what you have, working with whether you're in a coast or not. And then permaculture is also based on observation, seeing what's working, what nature's already done well, and then tweaking it to be better or faster, and also accepting the feedback that nature gives you and saying, okay, this one's not working. Obviously, we can't the deer are not going to be affected by garlic or neem oil. It needs netting or fencing. Um, cyclical Permaculture is also cyclical and iterative, meaning that's what it aims to be. It aims to create a produce and then bring it back into the system to create more of that again without needing input. So initially we have input from the outside world, but we're just cycling this abundance through and making it better and better each time. And similarly in Sage, this is what we're trying to do. So we're also trying to make things holistic in the sense that we're trying to remind people through this app of to consider other parts of their lives and also to remind them to do the things in the garden. So eventually you initially when we introduced Sage, it was mostly notifications when to plant things, but it's also later on going to be encouragement to do observations in your garden and working with nature based. Later on we will Sage will more and more be able to recommend as it learns from the data that people are using what in your climate works well with what not just the varieties, but the timings of your plantings. We have that, Vivian. I know you're a copious observer of your own garden, and you have this list where you're adjusting things according to what works last year, what worked better, where we're starting the tomatoes a little bit earlier and we're seeing when we're harvesting them. So that would be helpful for you to know, but also for more people to know. So in the app, as people add that data later on, we're hoping that more people will be able to benefit from that data. Those who are not as copious note takers as Vivian is. And also, it's based on observation and feedback, just like permaculture is, and it's also cyclical and iterative because we keep on improving it, and you'll see that a lot these weeks, especially more.
Especially over the next few weeks with all the daily patches that I'm pushing out.
So Dave is still working hard in the background, and we more on that in a little bit. Like if you or you yourself or you have teenagers who are online all the time, we have a Sage hackathon, and it's a great way to get kids to actually do something productive and learn about plants and also build this app together. So our whole family built this app with Dave, and it's kind of fun to do that and then have a break and then go out and play. And then so we'll have that in June, on June 15 next week. So another note is to go where we're putting the updates is on this Sage VIP page. So I'll drop the link, or Dave, if you don't mind dropping the link in the chat. the Sage VIP page has the latest updates on Sage and Dave's latest video on how Sage works. So if you would scroll down, this is not the page, but it looks like this initially. If you scroll down, you'll see Dave's latest video and
Actually,
the
what is the
upcoming
link?
events.
I just did the Sage page, but what's the VIP? Sage dash VIP.
VIP, yes.
Yeah,
Sage
let me post
Okay.
that link in the chat.
Okay, is that the end of it? Yes. So I'll stop sharing this and take it away from here and let me allow you to. And welcome, Lanny.
Okay, I posted that.
Thank you.
So, sorry, you want me to start now? Okay. So, the intent for this orientation is for aids just to get everybody to be able to log in and make sure that nobody's having any login issues. And then just to give you an update of the status and the current things that we fixed, as well as the things that are kind of bugaboos still. So it is an ongoing process. We released last Friday. Since then, I've probably fixed like 30 or 40 issues, mostly with the designer part of the application. So there's still, it's a lot more stable than it was, but there's probably another week's worth of bug fixing before it's pretty, I would consider it stable enough to be productive and you're not going to get frustrated. So just bear with us this week, and I will try to cover some of the things that, so you'll know like that this is a known bug. I also want to get a kind of a feedback from everybody about whether they want some more transparency or visibility into that bug list, or whether that's something that you'd rather not know about. And we currently have a bug report form, but we don't have any way for you to view the existing issues or bugs. So that's something kind of take a poll. So first of all, I just want to ask if everybody who has wanted to log into Sage so far has been able to. And if you have any problems, we can just quickly get you set up here so that you can log in. So if I just get a poll, you can, in the chat, you can just say, I haven't had a chance to yet, or I've logged in, or I'm having trouble logging in. Okay, so it's a mix. Like last Friday, you can send out a link with an email with some username password information. So if you didn't receive that email, then make sure to check your spam folders, or you should have received an email. And if you can't find that email, then just let us know, and we'll get you set up as quickly as possible. Okay, so yeah, it seems like there's nobody who. Oh, okay. So demo to log in. Let me start with that. So the URL, let me share my screen. Is sage.growmyownfood.com. And if you, let me log out so that we get that screen. So you should see a screen like this. And then you can enter in, your username should be an email. It's basically your email address. and then the password, there's a temporary password. So when you log in, you will probably get a pop-up initially that asks your address information. I already edited it in for this test account, so you won't, that's why I'm not seeing it, but if you want to change your temporary password, then there's this little profile icon in the upper right, so you can click there and change your password. Select that. So you can change your password there. You can also change your address. There's preferences for your climate, and Sage just uses this for convenience. So this is more for like the permaculture aspect of it in terms of recommendations. There is now support for that I added this week, so you can switch between imperial units and metric units. So if you want to, if you're outside of the country and you typically use meters and kilograms and things like that, Celsius, then you can switch that over. There is a custom climate here. So if you, again, are outside of the country, typically what Sage does is it looks at your address information, it looks at your zip code, it finds the closest weather station, and we have information stored, the average, the last 30 years of average temperatures for your, for that weather station, both minimum and maximum average temperatures, and then Sage uses that to calculate your planting windows for your plants. But the custom climate allows you to be able, you know, if let's say those averages are off because of climate change, or you don't live in the country, or you don't have a zip code, then you're able to use this custom climate instead. So I can give a quick, I'm going to just give a quick overview of what Sage is for those who aren't familiar with it. Once you log in, you'll see on the left a menu of the things that you can access. You can hide things by clicking that if you need more real estate on your screen. This is a web application, so you could open up multiple tabs, or you can reload the page in order to refresh things. The first page that it logs you into is the what we call the plants, or my plants. So this is where, this is kind of like the information view of your garden. So you can either look at your garden by garden area. So here I have a kitchen garden, and I might put all the plants that are there. You could organize it by raised bed. So let's say you have 3 raised beds. You could have raised bed 1, raised bed 2, raised bed 3. Unassigned is that's specifically like you've added your plants to the visual part of Sage, and you don't know quite yet. Maybe you have a list of plants that you want to grow, but you don't know exactly where they're going to go. That's kind of like the bucket where things get assigned before they get assigned to an area. So I have a lot of things under here. What you're seeing here are plant cards, so you can hide or expand a view of all the plants in that garden area. You're currently looking at the time-space view of a garden area. Each of these is a card that represents a group of plant species or varieties that are specifically in that garden area. So you might like only have one cucumber in a specific variety, and another cucumber of a different variety. If you want to see the information about this plant, then you can left click on the card, and then you see a lot more information that you can then customize about that cucumber. So you can customize the variety by clicking on these items to the right. You can set the season, and in order to save, you would just hit enter or click somewhere outside of. So if I did like market more, a variety, then you left click over here in order to save that information. And the way that Sage works is that there's a server that's sitting in the internet with a database, and it behind the scenes saves your changes. So you don't have to click save buttons or anything like that. In most cases, that change when you reload it will just be automatically saved. There's some general information. So we collect a lot of data points and about each type of plant. So we use that as a template, and then you can what happens is you add the plant to your garden area, and then you can customize all that information for your specific plant or group of plants. So this is from a template that we've loaded into our plant database. Just recently, we loaded over 200 plants. So some of the data we're still going through and verifying. So it's we had a lot of perennials, and it's a little some of the data might be a little off, but I think we will finish scrubbing through the data this week. And then, like I mentioned, you can change all this information here. There's planting dates. So these are used for calculating windows and things like that. There's harvest. So currently this was working, but it hasn't been a thing that I've been able to get around to. You can see a metric where you can track your harvest over time using a graph. This is working, but this is the beginning of what we like to do once the other parts of Sage are stable, is the observations part. So there will be a part where you'll be able to do this from a phone as well. But for now, you can upload photos and make some notes about what's happening with your plant. And then we'll have a search and a way to index and organize that information. The problem right now is when you upload a photo, it's not shrinking it into a thumbnail. So it shows you the full size of the plant. So that's one of the things that we're going to try to fix over the next week. There's also, if you don't like this card view of organizing your information, there's a plant list view where you can see all the information more like a classic spreadsheet tabular view. And you can edit things in this view by double clicking on the cell and changing the item. We have a PDF view currently just working for this spreadsheet view, but we're going to be adding it to other parts of the application. You can see here, I can see a kind of a tabular generation. And if you have any question, let me check the chat because I'm just going on and on.
Yeah, Vivian had a question about unassigned areas.
Oh, so Sage will automatically create the unassigned area. As soon as you go into the designer, it will auto create it, and you can't delete it. So it's basically built in. At some point, that's probably I should have it as soon as you create a new user account. But if you go into the designer, suddenly you'll have an unassigned area. And anything that you plant in the designer that's not in an area will just get assigned automatically to unassigned. Were there any other questions so far? Okay, so back to the plant list. Before I move to the other parts, I just wanted to mention that you can also view there's different ways to filter and look at your plants. So you can organize it by plant family. So unfortunately, I don't have any in this family. And these are like the 7 common families, plant families, for when people grow vegetables. So if I had some cabbages or something, then it's a good way. You want to be balanced. You don't want to have all your plants in a garden area be in one specific plant family. So this is a way to view that information. The default is time and space. So the idea there is that you would track your predicted harvests for your different vegetables. So you can see that kind of like the expected harvest, and you track your actual harvest against the expected harvest. And then the space, so you can assign a space for your garden area by clicking this. And then the Sage will calculate how much space the number of plants that you've assigned to that area take up, and then kind of calculate how much space you have available. You can also filter things. So if I wanted to see by season in a garden area, like in the spring, I want to grow this, and in the summer, I want to grow this. So there's a way to filter that information. And then finally, this guild function, it's a way to kind of build a guild. So a guild in permaculture is a arrangement, a kind of like a mini ecology of plants that ideally will support each other and fulfill different ecological niches. So mostly people think about like large scale, but every garden area could have multiple permaculture guilds. So we like to think of it like you have a star player, which could be a fruit tree or something that's very productive that you want to really thrive. And then you have a bunch of supporting players. So you can add this, and this guides you through a wizard where you pick the different elements in your guild. So I won't go through all of this right now, but
Sure.
hmm?
I'd like to see it.
Okay, fine. So the search might be a little bit off because, like I mentioned, the plant data is a little bit weird. So you pick your star player. I'm having trouble with my screen, laptop screen. So let's say I pick a lemon, and then I can pick the different plants by function. So I can pick a pollinator. Okay. So I think in our data right now, there's nothing marked as pollinator. So I'll skip that one. I'll do dynamic accumulator there. So comfrey is a dynamic accumulator. Maybe some ground cover. Let's see. Well, I'll add clover. Not know what it's not adding. Okay, so that's another bug that I have to fix. But
I
you
was
can,
to
you
see.
can. The intent is that you can add as many as you need functions here, and then you design your verticals. Oh wow, it added it. It just didn't update it. So now I have all this red clover. You can remove things here. So this looks at a different way of looking at it. It's not by the function, but looking at more like the in a food forest, you have different vertical layers that your plant occupies in terms of space. So at the lower level, you have root crops, and at the top level, you have these large trees that tower over everything. For example, nut trees tend to be very tall. And then your understory trees might be some things like apples that grow under the very tall nut trees. So you in a guild, you might have both an understory tree and canopy trees, and both of them will do well because they occupy different vertical spaces. And finally, oh, not finally, but there's another step where it's the same thing as what I mentioned with the plant family view. You can check the diversity of your guild to make sure that not everything is in the same plant family. The idea is that if everything is in the same plant family, for example, everything is mint, then that will mean that if there's any disease or pest that loves mint, then all the plants in your guild are going to be targeted by that pest. So ideally, you want to have different different families of, just to make sure that your guild is diverse. And then finally, there's like a little tool where you can kind of do a little mini design of your guild. The sizing of these icons is a little off, so that's one of the things that we're still going to fix. But you can kind of get a quick kind of graphical view of your guild, and then when you're happy with that, you can save the guild. And now if I go back to the time space, you can see that I've added those elements to the kitchen garden. So that's just a very quick overview of how the Build a Guild works. Now to the designer. So this is a two-dimensional, it's like an overhead view of your garden. You'll see two parts to it. Right in the middle is it's kind of like the canvas, the drawing board, where you actually put your elements. And then on the right side here, you see a floating tool set that you can use to place different kinds of elements. So just to explain what each of these different elements are. Right now we've disabled terrain. That was where you could load kind of like background maps. So we had tried loading Google Maps, but the resolution was too poor. Each of these grids represents a square foot. So the images that we're getting from Google Maps were very, very poor. So for right now, I've kind of disabled it. I think this will become more like if you have contour maps and you want to load that information. The structures and paths. So that's if you wanted to add things like elements to your garden, beehives, arbors, tables, kind of an overhead view of your house. The path function. So that's if you wanted to add fences or paths. So the way that this works is you click on the item, you pick the fill type. So that's kind of like what will be the pattern that will be filled into the shape. And then you would just left click somewhere to place an initial item. So you see that there's these control points that you can then drag to make your path. So I could drag this. I can change the thickness of this. Oh, let me make sure I've selected it. Change that to 5. Change the thickness of that, and I can also change the fill. So if I wanted to do a river or something, then I'll change the fill. So that's very useful. These control points are very flexible, but they're not very intuitive right now. So I apologize for them not being that intuitive. By default, it's a sharp edge, but if you double click on the point, then you can get a little box, and then you can make a curve. So you can make pretty much any shape. If you wanted to add control points, this is also not that intuitive yet. If you hover over where you want to add the point and you press on a Windows machine, you press Control left click. I think I need the thickness to be a little hard to select. You should set that up so it's easier. So you'd hover where you want to add that control point and control left click on a Windows machine. You just click if you're on a Mac, and then that just gives you another point that you can use to move around. If you want to delete a point, then you do shift click, and that removes the vertex point. If you keep cycling through, so you keep double clicking, you get different types of ways that you can alter things. So the first one was kind of like a mirror curve. this one, you can see I'm altering the one side, but the other side is not altering in the same way. If you double click again, then these are now free. So I can change one side without it affecting the other side. And if you double click again, then it goes back to the sharp edge, the corner. So that's paths. Then you can also copy the paths. So, and this is generally the case with any element that you can put in the designer. You can copy by selecting the item and clicking the select button, and you'll get another version of that. So that can be useful if you have repeating elements. So areas. I'm just going to explain this because I haven't fully eliminated most of the bugs in this. So this is the way that Sage is holistic, because in the plant section, we had those different garden areas. And this is a way to be able to link those two things. So if I wanted to, I could select one of these items and then place it in the kitchen garden area. So I could draw the areas physically by clicking this icon. For example, I could draw a box, and then any plants that I put in that area will now automatically be added to the area in the plant section. So this is almost working, but not quite. So I would recommend probably just avoiding this layer for now. Borders. So you can make a rectangular region, you can make a circular region. It's similar to all the control elements are similar to the way that you would draw the path. But you can also do a custom shape. So the custom shape will give you just a blob to start off with, but then it's a polygonal shape. So you can then move these items around. So it's other than that, it's very similar to the way that the path works, where you can add vertex points. So I'll double check the chat again. Are there any questions at this point?
Sorry, I was trying to type, ran out of time. What is the difference between like the area and the border? You would draw a border around a raised bed maybe, but the area would be what you'd be planting it into.
So the area is less of a visible thing. It's more like a logical thing. So it's more like one of these things that when you're first designing your garden, you draw your areas, and then you start adding, you kind of more than likely even make it invisible, or you might just make it when you add an area. Hopefully this works.
It's okay. I could put a
this
border
little
around
yellow-
my area for a raised bed, and then I put my paths in between, kind of thing.
Yeah, so the idea is I would put this polygonal shape around where I want that to be my garden area. And then I could then I could select plants and drag them into that area. And then they would, in the plants part, let's see if this works. Yeah, you would see the plants show up. So the idea is then you can go back and forth between the two views. It's that you'd have this areas view, this plants view, but it would correlate to what you're seeing in this view. So that's the intent. I don't know if that answers your question.
Yes.
So the border is more like that's a visible element that's just a background, like you want to see in this part, you want it to be filled with soil.
Would help me identify my raised beds.
Yeah. or grass, or you have a pond or something.
Can I ask a few more questions?
Yeah, sure.
If I, this is back in the plants thing, I think, if I enter information about a variety, of like a cucumber variety, and I enter, days to harvest and stuff like that, it will be in populate my part of the database, so that next season, if I want to the same variety, the information will already be there for me, but it may not be there for everybody else that uses Sage. Is that correct?
Yeah, so think of it like you're making a copy. So in the database, there's all this information about the plant, like let's say concrete. And then whenever you add the plant to your area, you're creating a copy of that doesn't affect the original.
Okay.
Then you change all of that information for your specific plant. Now, if you wanted to save that so you don't have to customize it again the next year, we have so this is another part that needs a little bit of debugging. So it's might not be working great, but the intent is there's this little icon that's probably a little too small right now that saves this. So I could call it Vivian's concrete. You can pick a picture. I don't have any pictures, so I'll just skip that for now. But there we go. There's another tab here called My Favorites. And the idea is that over the course of the year, you probably have half a dozen favorites. And then the following year, you could essentially create them again in your garden.
Yeah, and I guess I was thinking, I have like 6 varieties of tomatoes that I'm growing right now. So I just make it, and then like I save that one, and then I do another generic and I save it with a different variety name. So, and then if I grow them next year, there's all the information I entered would be there for next year. So
yeah, so one of the things once this core part of Sage is pretty stable, there's a company called Seedlinked that does seed trials with Seed Savers Exchange. So they've collected varietal information, and what we're going to either succeed with collaborating with them or somebody else who does something similar, so that we can get not just generic species information, but also varietal information, because the varieties can change quite a lot as well. I mean, you might have a tomato that only took 70 days to go to harvest, and one that takes 100 days. So that's one of those things that will we're just going to be a black hole of data where we suck in all the plant data from everywhere, so that we can kind of organize that and make everybody's lives hopefully slightly easier. Did you have any other questions?
yeah, if it doesn't take up, anyways, does it recognize that you may have perennials in your bed that then are going to be there all the time, occupying that space, whereas you might have also annuals?
Yeah, so we're still it's a work in progress, because it's never really been done before where you have these things represented visually. So the way that I've kind of organized it now is it knows whether it's a perennial or an annual. There's with an annual, there's seed starting dates and transplant dates and harvest dates. With a perennial, there's none of that. You wouldn't enter in that information. So it will calculate timelines and things only if that information is present. And then for perennials, it's just a matter of, you're not filtering by spring, summer, fall, winter. But part of the data that we have collected, but we haven't really applied it anywhere yet, is for all the perennials, we've also gathered the flowering windows as well as the
Fruiting.
times of year that you harvest.
Mhm.
So eventually, for perennials, you'll also be able to see, like a timeline of your year, And then see, okay, I have strawberries coming in May and raspberries coming in June and blueberries coming in July. So you can see, like that kind of like over the year that you have good coverage for your perennials. But right now that we have that data, but we just, it's already, we're just trying to get everything else stable first.
Thank you.
Yep.
Thanks so much for your questions, Vivian.
Okay, so back to I'll just wrap up with the designers. So the plants part, you click this little leaf icon, and then you can search for your plants here. And then we've got icons for all the plants. We've tried to store the size of the plant. That's one of the things that we're still kind of going through and making sure that it makes sense. So when you add an Arctica, it's fairly small, but if I wanted to add an apple tree, then it's larger. So we're trying to, it's not exact, but we're trying to kind of like faithfully represent the actual scale of the plant. If you had, so you can then use the select icon to move your plants around. I think I have too much stuff. Delete it. So if I want to place a new plant, then I left click wherever I want to put that. I can then select and move it by clicking the select icon, hovering. You'll see like there's the cursor changes to a little hand. And then I can left click and drag to move it around. So let's say you wanted to put 50 of these things, it would get kind of tedious. So we have this idea of a plant patch. So I could enter the number of plants. Oh, I just edited it. And then I could specify the number of plants wide, like 5 plants by 2 plants. And what it's trying to do is look at the plant spacing that's associated with the recommended spacing between plants for that species, and then creates a grid that represents visually what a patch of that plant would look like. And then you can drag that around as well. If you need to get rid of an element right now, we only have single delete, but there's going to be some hotkeys that we add for scrolling as well as for deleting. So right now you have to individually delete things. If things get too messy, we have for now this delete all button that just kind of wipes everything. You have to reload the page, but that'll give you a clean slate if you've got things that are just all over the place. The print kind of works, but don't use it for now. Because right now it's just printing the small window. But if you zoom out and you had a large garden and you've got elements, plants and things everywhere, it would only print this window. So if you zoomed in again, we're still just trying to figure out how we can get the whole garden design in the PDF. So for now, that's not currently working.
Vivian had a question about rotation, Dave.
Oh, rotation. Sure, go ahead, Vivian.
So what is the rotation field in the designer?
So if you had a border that added a rectangle and I wanted to make a diamond shape, then I could set the rotation of that to 45 degrees. That might just be useful for certain what we found that it's useful for so far is if you make a custom border, and then it's symmetric around an axis, then you could copy it. So I could copy that and then change the rotation. So I could do so it's just a kind of a convenience thing, so that you'd be able to create borders more efficiently.
Can we rotate the plants as well so they match the rotated border?
Yeah, so that you can actually. I had one of our kids is like, why would you ever rotate a plant? But you can also rotate plants, so that's more useful for a patch. I don't think you would ever rotate an individual. It might look a little odd, but yeah. Change the one thing that I've done out of design choice, but everybody has to let me know whether this is annoying or not, is you can only select elements for the layer that you have selected. So I only have plant selected. I can't select borders right now. I did that intentionally to make it a little easier to isolate the things that you're interacting with, but Nikki's already mentioned that might not be ideal. So if other people mention that, then I'll kind of figure out a better way of doing that. So I could just change the background on that. So I'll show you a little better.
Cute.
So finally, we have the dashboard. And right now, this is just a placeholder, but we have all those other parts that have information about when your plants would need to be started and when they need to be transplanted, when you should harvest them. So I wanted this to be kind of a quick summary of all that information. And also kind of a little bit of a cheerleader, rah-rah. So in GIY, we have monthly check-ins where we celebrate your wins. So this would be an area where you could see how successful you were and you get a little bit of feedback. I'm probably going to leave this part until the other parts that I've shown that are a little bit buggy are working perfectly. But I would probably say that it won't be more than 2 weeks or a week and a half before I start filling out this information.
Wow, thank you so much, Dave. Does anybody have any questions? Anything else? Suggestions, comments?
And I wanted to get feedback on whether we have a bug list that's internal that we're not actually sharing transparently, but if people want to see all the things that we're working on, that's something that we could do. And then secondly, if you have something that's driving you nuts, if you submit it through the report bug form, that'll get higher attention, because I will just be more responsive to those things. So make sure that if you see things, now is kind of like the time to let us know, so that I'm going through each day and trying to resolve a number of these items.
I am writing a poll to ask you guys, or anybody in the chat. I won't deploy this poll. Who would Dave's question on seeing the bug board, we don't want to be too much information either, but we also want to be transparent. So if you would like to be a part of the bug board and see what bugs or features you want to report there directly, you can do Vivian, you've done this in the past, or test bugs for us, just drop in the chat whether you'd like to see that. Yes for me, and we'll send you an invitation to a particular board where you can see the bugs moving.
So this is exclusively for Kickstarter backers.
Yes, we want everyone. Not enough space to have everybody. It's like maybe 8 people, I think, and some of them are already our kids. So yes, awesome, Frank. We will do that. Thank you. Yes, awesome. Okay. Oh, and Lisa says, thank you so much. It's definitely a labor of love. I'm excited to get going and use Sage to simplify and enhance my garden planning. It's so fun to have you again here, Lisa. Um, and I can't wait to see what your garden progress will be because of it. I'll begin using it next week and will provide my notes at that time. Thank you so much. All right, these are great questions and great feedback, and we ended right on time. Is there anything else you'd like to leave us with, Dave?
No, I just want to thank everybody for kind of believing in us and supporting this. It's definitely uh progressing, but sometimes it's a little hard if you look at a small window to see it over time. But I think the fact that we're kind of focused and dedicated, we're gradually moving this thing to the line. So I appreciate everybody's patience and support.
Okay. Well, I'll have to jump into the check-ins, which is what part of the GIY program is about. So I'll have to close this call, but thank you so much. Go Team Permaculture. Thank you, Lisa. Thank you, everyone. Oh, I do have a surprise. So I'm writing a book for Mother Earth News called Permaculture Gardening for All, and all your names are on the dedication page. So each one of you who are here. So watch out for that one. All right, take good care. Thank you. Bye.